The slap came so fast I couldn't even breathe, let alone react. My glasses flew off my face, skidding across the elegant ballroom floor and shattering under the chandelier's golden glow. 130 guests turned silent all at once. My cheek burned sharply, but the pain inside my chest eclipsed everything. Juliet, my daughter-in-law, dressed in white lace and arrogance, had slapped me on her own wedding day because I refused to give her the keys to my apartment. "That's what you get for being selfish," she shouted, her voice slicing through the room. "A woman your age doesn't need that much space." The silence afterward was crushing. I bent down, trembling, to gather the fragments of my broken glasses while every guest watched as if I were a spectacle. Some looked away in discomfort. Others whispered behind manicured hands. Not one person moved to help the old mother-in-law who had just been publicly shamed. My son Ethan simply stood still, eyes glued to the floor, as if denying my existence made him innocent in all this. "You're not welcome here anymore," Juliet continued, smoothing her flawless gown. "Ethan and I need privacy to start our new life. Your apartment is perfect for us while we find something better." Her words dripped with venom. For months, I'd endured her comments about my clothes, my car, my simple routines, little insults she delivered with sugary poison. But this crossed a line that should never have been touched. I rose slowly, the weight of every stare pressing against me. Tears slid down my cheeks, but inside, something had shifted forever. That slap wasn't merely physical, it was a rupture in the life I'd tolerated for too long. I had spent years keeping my head low, choosing humility, choosing peace, choosing silence. But I had secrets. Truths no one, not even my son, had ever learned. As I walked toward the exit, memories of the last few months rushed at me like waves breaking against a shore. I remembered Juliet's first visit to my apartment 2 years ago, the way her face fell at the sight of my modest living room, my old furniture, my tiny kitchen. "Seriously, this is where Ethan's mom lives?" she'd said, just loud enough to wound. From that day, every visit became an exercise in humiliation. "Aurora, you really should move somewhere smaller," she told me 3 months ago during dinner. "You can't maintain such a big place at your age. And Ethan and I want kids. We'll need more room." Her smile was a thin veil over greed. And my son, poor, spineless Ethan, transformed into a puppet the moment she spoke. The insults escalated. First my clothes. "Aurora, don't you own anything modern?" Then my car. "That thing is ancient, it's dangerous." Then my part-time job at the flower shop. "Why is a woman your age still working?" Each word was a needle, pricking deeper and deeper into my dignity. My name is Aurora Hughes. I'm 68 and I've lived a quiet life on purpose. I work 3 days a week at a flower shop. I drive a 10-year-old car. I buy my clothes on sale. To the world, especially to Juliet, I am a simple, aging widow living on a fixed income. That is the image I carefully constructed for decades. What none of them knew, what none of those pitying eyes understood, was that my life looked entirely different before my husband died. Robert wasn't the office worker everyone believed he was. Our modest lifestyle had been intentional, a shield, a choice, a way to protect our family. A choice I now saw with painful clarity had been far more necessary than I once imagined. As I stepped out of the ballroom, whispers trailed me like a poisonous fog. "Poor thing, she looks so fragile," Juliet's aunt murmured. "The bride is right. She can't take care of herself." Ethan's cousin added. "She should be in a retirement home," someone else chimed in. Each comment was acid on an open wound. The cool air conditioning inside the hall felt icy against the hot flush of humiliation burning through me. My hands shook as I dug through my worn black purse, 5 years old, still sturdy, chosen for practicality rather than show, something Juliet would never understand. Finally, I found my phone and dialed a number I had sworn I wouldn't use unless absolutely necessary. Carlos, it's Aurora. I need you at the Royal Oaks Ballroom immediately. Yes, right now. Bring the documents. All of them. It's time they know the truth. My voice quivered, but a steel I'd forgotten lived in my chest. Are you certain, Mrs. Hughes? Carlos asked gently. Once this is done, there's no going back. I turned to look at the ballroom one last time, at Juliet laughing loudly with her friends, no doubt recounting how she had put me in my place, at Ethan standing beside her, smiling weakly, offering not even a flicker of shame. Completely sure, I said. 30 minutes, Carlos. No more. I hung up, squared my shoulders, and walked toward my car. For the first time in years, I could feel the mask I had worn for so long starting to crack, and beneath it, the truth they had all mistaken for weakness was finally ready to rise. For the first time, they were about to meet the real Aurora Hughes. And when that moment arrived, when truth shattered the fragile illusions they lived in, they would finally understand what regret truly meant. The parking lot was nearly empty, washed in pale street light that cast long shadows across the asphalt. I sat in my old sedan, hands folded in my lap, waiting out the 30 minutes that would rewrite the rest of their lives. 30 minutes until they realized they had made the gravest mistake possible, humiliating the very woman who had been protecting them far more than they ever imagined. As I waited, memories rushed in like a relentless tide, each one reminding me how I had arrived at this exact turning point. It had all begun 2.5 years earlier, when Ethan showed up at my apartment wearing that nervous little smile he'd always had as a boy. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special," he said, voice trembling with excitement. And then she appeared, Juliet. Perfect hair, perfect nails, designer clothing, and a smile that was too polished to be sincere. The moment she stepped inside, her eyes swept over my apartment with quiet disdain, analyzing each detail like a judge assessing a low-ranked exhibit. "How cozy," she murmured, glancing at my secondhand furniture and faded curtains. The implication in her tone was colder than winter. Ethan, blinded by his infatuation, didn't sense the disdain lacing every word she uttered. Dinner that night was a delicate disaster. Juliet barely touched the meal I had spent hours preparing, claiming she was watching her figure. When I asked about her family, her answers were vague, evasive, but she had no problem probing into my finances. "And how do you manage on a widow's pension, Aurora? Must be difficult to live on so little," she said with faux sympathy. What she didn't know was that I had been studying her just as carefully as she was studying me. Over the following months, I began noticing troubling patterns. Whenever they visited, she made subtle comments about how outdated everything was, about how I deserved better in my golden years. But her eyes always lingered on what truly mattered: the prime location, the spacious layout, the panoramic balcony view. One afternoon, while Ethan stepped into the bathroom, I overheard her whispering on the phone in my kitchen. "Yes, Mom, his mother's apartment is in a super expensive area. If I can convince her to downsize, we can stay here until we get our own place. She's so naive, she might even thank us for helping her." Her words sliced through me, but I stayed composed when she returned, pretending nothing had happened. From that moment on, every encounter between us became a quiet performance. She played the thoughtful daughter-in-law concerned for my well-being, and I played the docile older woman who needed guidance. Privately, I watched her every move with the precision of someone preparing for battle. As the months went by, her manipulation grew skillful. First came the gentle suggestions. "Aurora, I saw wonderful apartments for seniors. No hassle, all services included." Then the pressure tightened. "You shouldn't live alone at your age. What if something happens and no one knows?" Each phrase was crafted to make me feel fragile, incapable. Even Ethan began repeating her lines exactly, like someone trained. "Mom, she's right. I think downsizing could help you." Watching him slowly morph into her puppet hurt more than anything Juliet could ever say. The boy I had raised with such devotion now saw me not as a mother, but an obstacle to remove. The tension peaked after they announced their engagement. Their visits were frequent but strained. Juliet began bringing brochures for retirement communities, spreading them across my coffee table like real estate proposals. "I'm exploring the best options for you, Aurora. I want you to have a comfortable future," she'd insist, masking greed as compassion. But I wasn't idle. One afternoon, when they left to run wedding errands, I called an old friend. "Amelia, I need you to look into something. A couple is very interested in my apartment, and I want to understand their real financial situation." When she called back with the results, the truth chilled me. Juliet and Ethan were drowning in debt. Their extravagant wedding, over $50,000, was entirely on credit cards and loans. Their rental apartment was weeks from eviction. Their luxury cars were financed beyond their capacity. Their luxury lifestyle was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Suddenly, everything clicked. The urgency to get married, their obsession with my well-being, their insistence that I move. It was never about love or concern. My apartment, located in one of the most desirable areas of the city, was their salvation. The realization struck me like a moral wound. Ethan, the son I raised with values of honesty and sacrifice, had surrendered himself to manipulation and greed. I was no longer his mother. I was a solution. In the weeks before the wedding, the pressure turned ruthless. "Aurora, you're being selfish," Juliet told me 3 days before the ceremony. "Ethan and I have sacrificed so much. The least you can do is help us with housing." The mask had fallen completely. That night, shaken but resolute, I called Carlos. "Prepare the documents," I told him. "I may need to reveal information I've kept hidden for years." His tone instantly shifted. "Mrs. Hughes, once this is out in the open, there's no returning to normal. The consequences could be severe." But my mind was made up. Silence had protected them for long enough. Their choices had extinguished any loyalty I once felt. And now, here I was, sitting alone in the dark parking lot outside the ballroom, waiting for Carlos to arrive with the truth that would shatter their illusions. 25 minutes, and Juliet, Ethan, and every guest who had pitied me would finally learn who I was. 25 minutes until their carefully crafted world of lies and greed collapsed like a sandcastle under a rising tide. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, shadows swaying across the pavement, poetic in their quiet dance. On such a lovely night, so many illusions were about to die. 20 minutes had passed since my call. Every second felt unbearably long. From my car, I could see the ballroom lights glowing gold, laughter spilling into the night, music floating through the open windows. It was surreal to think that in mere moments, that blissful celebration would twist into something entirely different. I closed my eyes, letting the most agonizing memories surface. I needed to remember exactly why I had reached this point of no return. The worst humiliation came 2 weeks ago during what Juliet called an important family meeting. She arrived at my apartment thankled by her parents, an ambush disguised as concern. "Aurora, we want to discuss your future," her mother began, looking at me with disdain one reserves for something inconvenient. "It's time for you to make responsible choices," added her father, eyeing my home like a property evaluator. "Living alone in such a big place is unnecessary and dangerous." Their lines were too rehearsed, too synchronized. Ethan sat beside them silently, nodding now and then, the perfect puppet in their little performance. Seeing him among people who treated me like a burden felt like watching the son I'd nurtured all my life burn out. He finally said, in a voice I barely recognized, "Mom, they're right. I think Juliet and I think it's best for everyone if you move somewhere more suitable for your age." "Appropriate for my age," I repeated, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "And who exactly decides what's appropriate for me? You?" Juliet's mother exchanged a knowing look with her husband, a silent confirmation of the conclusion they had already reached long before this conversation began. "Aurora," she said calmly, "we understand this is difficult to accept, but you must think about what's best for Ethan and Juliet." "What's best for them?" I echoed quietly, the shape of the conspiracy finally coming into focus. "And I suppose my apartment would be ideal for them to start their married life. Isn't that right?" The suffocating silence that followed said far more than words ever could. They had planned this moment down to the last detail, each sentence rehearsed, each manipulation perfectly arranged. Juliet seized the moment, stepping into her role with polished confidence. "Aurora, it's not about the apartment. It's about your well-being. We've been doing research, and we found a wonderful community for people your age. 24-hour medical care, social activities, prepared meals. You'd have friends who understand what you're going through." Her sugary smile made my stomach churn. "What I'm going through?" I asked softly, feigning confusion. "And what exactly do you think I'm going through, Juliet?" She glanced briefly toward Ethan for reassurance before answering. "Well, loneliness, financial insecurity, fear of not being able to care for yourself. It's normal at your age, Aurora. You don't need to feel ashamed of needing help." The arrogance of this 28-year-old child dictating what was normal for me was almost laughable until I saw something chilling in her eyes. A cold certainty, a sense of entitlement to my home, my life, my choices. To her, I wasn't a person with autonomy. I was a puzzle piece to be moved out of their way. "We've run the numbers," Juliet's father added, pulling out a folder they had obviously prepared in advance. "The residence costs about $2,500 a month. With the sale of your apartment, you'd have enough to cover expenses for many years, and there'd still be a sizable amount left to help Ethan and Juliet with their initial marriage costs." There it was, raw, unveiled truth. It wasn't about concern. It wasn't about safety. It was about money. It was about converting my home into liquid funds to sustain their sinking lifestyle. "And if I refuse?" I asked, although the answer was already obvious. Ethan finally spoke, voice stiff, rehearsed. "Mom, we hope it won't come to drastic measures, but if your mental health declines to the point where you can't make rational decisions..." The threat hung in the air like a noose. If I didn't cooperate, they would pursue legal avenues to declare me incompetent. They had researched everything. They were ready to strip me of my autonomy by force. My son, the child I had raised with every ounce of love I possessed, sat there while strangers threatened his own mother. That night after they left with my firm refusal, I cried for the first time in years, not from sadness, but from the final death of the illusions I had once held about my family. I called Carlos immediately. "I need an urgent investigation," I told him through tears. "I want the real financial picture of my son and his fiancée, all of it. Debts, income, liabilities, everything." The report he delivered was soul-shattering. Ethan earned $45,000 a year as a sales manager, yet carried over $80,000 in credit card debt. Juliet worked part-time as an image consultant, barely making $4,000 annually, but spending like a corporate executive. Together, their debts exceeded $120,000, not including the loans for their extravagant wedding. Their $2,000 a month rental was 3 months overdue. Their cars consumed 60% of their income. One credit card was maxed out. They'd begun using cash advances to keep others afloat. They weren't simply struggling. They were in free fall. And my apartment was their only parachute. But the worst blow came near the end of the report. For the past 6 months, Ethan had been calling banks and insurance agencies asking about loans against his elderly mother's property. He had even inquired about legal procedures to obtain financial power of attorney over senior citizens. My own son had been strategizing my dispossession for months. And then came the final dagger: Juliet's private conversations, recorded by the investigator. She had been telling friends she had sacrificed herself by agreeing to marry an older, less attractive man because his mother owned valuable property and had no heirs who could compete. To her, marrying Ethan wasn't love. It was a calculated investment. For a brief time, I considered revealing my true financial status, thinking the shock might jolt them back to the people I once knew. But after reading that report, I understood. This wasn't just about desperation. It was greed, pure and cold, poisoning everything it touched. The days before the wedding were torturous. Every call from Ethan was scripted pressure. Every visit from Juliet came with venom-laced comments about my selfishness. They treated me as if I was already a centile burden whose voice no longer mattered. The night before the wedding, Ethan made his final plea. "Mom, tomorrow is the biggest day of my life. Please don't ruin it by being difficult. Juliet only wants what's best for all of us." Those words confirmed what I feared. I had lost my son long before today. And now, sitting in my car waiting for Carlos, I understood everything had led to this moment. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was justice. It was the consequence they had earned. It was the line they should never have crossed. 15 minutes until everything changed. My hands trembled as I dialed Joseph's number, my 70-year-old neighbor, the quiet witness to all the turmoil of recent months. "Joseph, it's Aurora. I need a favor. A very important one," I said, voice shaking. "Please go to my apartment and bring me the brown folder from the second drawer of my desk. Yes, right now. It's urgent." Joseph had been like a brother to me since Robert passed. I trusted him without needing to explain anything. As I waited, I remembered our conversation a week earlier. He had seen Juliet arrive with a real estate appraiser without informing me. "Aurora, that girl brought a man with a briefcase. He was measuring your apartment from the outside. When they noticed I was watching, they left in a hurry. I don't like this at all." Joseph had been the first to detect the change in Ethan's behavior. "Your son doesn't greet me like he used to," he said softly. "He used to chat when he came by. Now he rushes in and out, like he's ashamed." His words had only confirmed what my heart had already known. I had lost my son long before the night the final blow landed.